All right, welcome back, everyone. We are here today with Miss Tahirih Naylor-Thimm. Today is actually going to be such a great treat because she is an extremely accomplished individual. So let me just run down. I left my list off screen, but off the top of my head, she was an associate professor at Brusha. She's worked with the Attorney General. She's at or with, I don't know, maybe both. She is an accomplished lawyer in her own right, where she represented the Baha'i faith at the UN General Assembly in New York. Most important of all, she is a mother to 4 beautiful children. And welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you feeling today?
I'm okay. I'm a little nervous.
We're trying to break the nerves.
I wasn't nervous, but now I'm a little nervous.
No, we had a good laugh off camera.
Yeah.
But I think what I really just want to start off by knowing your journey into the legal space, and then also how you got into education. So if you want to start off, where'd you go to school?
Like, how early are we starting?
Ooh. Let's go all the way back.
No,
you know what I
not
mean?
all the way.
You know, it's an interesting fact. She actually lived in Guyana as a child.
Right, all the way back.
Yeah, we could start there if you'd like. And what
we
led
can
you?
Skim over some of it.
Yeah, we'll skim. We'll skim. Let's
broad strokes.
Yeah.
So my parents moved to Guyana, South America when I was 6 weeks old. And so I started my education in kind of a very small school in a remote part of Guyana. Dirt floor, I don't think it went past a few grades. But then we moved back to Canada when I was 6. So I continued there. I went to a Baha'i school on Vancouver Island called Maxwell Baha'i School. Some people will know about that, for grade 10. And then when Nancy Campbell opened in my 11th grade, I came here and graduated from here.
Just so the people know, how many people were in your graduating class?
1.
And who was that one person?
That would be me. So I got to be class president, valedictorian, highest marks, but also lowest marks.
Oh, yeah.
Biology was the most terrifying class because I remember sitting down in biology and the teacher started introducing stuff and then asked a question. And I literally did like who's going to answer this question? Because I didn't know the answer.
Yeah.
So there were pros and cons, but luckily, the staff and teachers were awesome and it was a good experience.
Yeah. Off camera, Tahirih was just telling us about how she ended up attending Brusha University, and the process that went in. How about you let them know too? Yeah.
Okay. So after high school, I was lucky enough to spend a year doing service in some different countries in the South Pacific, Samoa and Tonga and Australia, and then to Europe. And during this time, we were also trying to sort out where I was going to go to university for my undergraduate degree. And so I'd applied a few different places. And my parents, I remember being in Tirana, Albania, at the family of my husband, actually, at the time. I didn't know. We re-met 10 years later. But we received this fax, and they're like, Tahirih, you've got a fax. And it was from my parents with a beautiful picture of Brusha University. And they're like, we think you should go here. Like, it's part of Western, but this is the residence you could stay in. And I was like, that looks really nice. Sounds good. So I signed up and I arrived there, and it turns out it's run by Catholic sisters and the Ursuline sisters. And
by sisters, she means nuns.
Yes, and there was a nun on every floor. So there was a reason my parents took the time to fax that over all the way to Albania for me. Turned out, and I was telling you the story, and that the nuns were like so cool. Like they could care less what these, young teenage girls were doing, more interested in all the amazing community and social justice work that they were engaged in. Extremely welcoming of people from all different backgrounds. And I was lucky enough, as you mentioned, to go back and teach there as a professor a few years ago, which was also a great experience.
Her saying that makes me think of like Sister Act with like Whoopi Goldberg. I don't know if that's what it was.
Honestly,
like.
Well, they didn't wear the habits. They were normal clothes, but they were that cool, like really genuinely. Sister Teresa, I still I just look up to her for how she cared for everybody and welcomed everybody. I think the other thing that was very familiar to me is that they felt like that spiritual and material progress went hand in hand. So they were really concerned with girls and women's education, and that's why they'd started the university. And they welcomed, kids from all background, but like when we had a meeting of student council or whatever it was, there was a moment for devotion, for reverence, whatever your background, and then we could get on with some of the practical work that needed to be done. But that tying together of those two, complementary aspects of our reality, I think really fit for me, and it was a really great experience being there.
That's incredible. You mentioned them being really involved in social justice, and your life has been idea has been woven into everything that you've done. Yeah. Would you say that's where you really got into it, or was it baked into? Well, I mean, we had your dad on here a week ago, so like, was that? Would you give him, or your mother, or was it really there on that university campus, or was it somewhere else?
That's a good question. I think. Part of being involved in the Baha'i community and coming to Nancy Campbell is always this idea of service and how we can contribute to the world. But I really think that's kind of like a dialectic process. Like, I'm trying to be of service, but actually I'm learning so much in the process. So each summer I would go and do service in different parts of the world, and I could see the suffering that much of humanity is experiencing, continues to experience. So I remember thinking at a very, maybe around 16, 17, that, dedicating myself to trying to eliminate some of the inequalities that I saw would be like a worthy purpose for my life. And I think particularly around girls and women, that was something that I felt very passionate about at that time. And so it helped, sometimes we get questions from parents at Nancy Campbell about how much service their kids are doing, and is this going to affect their grades? And I would say from my own experience, by the time I went to do my undergraduate degree, I was very clear on why I was studying and what the purpose was and what I wanted to get out of it, compared to some of my friends that I saw that were, half there to have fun and just weren't sure because they hadn't been exposed to, some of the things for good or good or bad that I was. So I had a feeling of why I wanted to study and what I wanted to do with it. And whether, who knows, only God can say in the end whether I accomplished any of that. But I did have that desire and impulse in my heart to try to do good.
And being the only girl and only person in your class kind of gave you that clarity to begin with.
Wasn't anybody else to turn to. It was me.
Right. I want to talk a bit about your work in New York at the BIC. Actually, fun fact, we are filming right now, and the UN General Assembly is happening as we speak. Not going to get political, but certain people gave some pretty interesting speeches today. If you were there right now and you had to address that large crowd of world leaders, what would Ms. Tahirih Naylor-Thimm have to say? Oh, gosh, that's a big question. Yeah. I mean, I was there serving. So the UN accredits certain non-governmental organizations that have worldwide spread, that represent a worldwide community. Mm-hmm. So I was one of, 3 or 4 representatives for the Baha'i community to the UN. So we had we could go and observe different, assemblies and commissions and meetings. And so my work was mainly around social and sustainable development and human rights. So I can't say what I would say. I mean, I would say we really need to think about how we're working on things right now. Wait, look right into the camera and say that. Right?
The pressure. We need to think about how we're working on things right now.
I'm loving the body language. You could definitely. I'm moved. I'm moved. Genuinely.
There's a lot we could say about what should be happening on the world stage. We're teaching a class right now in our world citizenship curriculum about culture. And today we were talking about what's accepted as a part of culture, and then how we transform culture into what it should be. And sometimes we kind of accept things this is just the way things are done. But we can see that isn't actually helpful to allow humanity to flourish and prosper. And the structures of the UN, emerged out of a certain time period, but certainly need to evolve and change to represent the interests of humanity as a whole. So even when we were there working really hard, I remember one of my bosses kind of saying, is this the international institutions that's going to serve the best interests of humanity for the future or not? We don't know which way this is going to go. And so we all have to, but on the other hand, we have to support all processes that are working for good, but be realistic about some of the problems that we see. So hopefully that's part of what we're teaching our students, is to look, with an eye that is critical in some ways, but also is willing to contribute to anything that's helping the betterment of humanity. So I learned a lot about that there. I think there are many people with I actually worked with nuns, a lot of nuns there too, because they're.
Can't get rid of them,
I can't. I love the Catholic sisters. So they were really trying their best to represent, the poorest of the poor, and speak to them. There was many, ambassadors and representatives from various countries that were, trying hard to work for good. So it was a cool experience.
So how does someone walk away from that? Because, you see a lot of people go to school for international development or international relations, and the UN and these large NGOs, Save the Children, is like the be all end all, right? And that's where people want to end up. And that's where a lot of people feel like they can affect change the most. But you were there, and now you've chosen to be here in Stratford, Ontario, which is great. Great place. We don't have New York style pizzas, but we do have a nice shawarma spot around the corner and some great poutine and the festival. But I digress.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
How do you, and what sort of advice would you give to people who want to go down that path of they want to affect change and they feel that these large NGOs are the only way to do it, but you've been there, done that, and walked away?
I think that's a really good question. I will say that what I share is only very much my own personal opinion and path. So people can have very, very different experiences. I loved serving there and working there. And I had a great group of colleagues, it was an amazing experience. And I managed to do that at a bit of a young age. So the practical question is, I got pregnant with twins. My husband got a residency in Stamford, Connecticut. And I felt at that time, for our family, I needed to be with them. But also part of what started to happen is a question of where you see real change happen. I remember a Facebook post came up, those throwback 10, 15 years ago. And no,
I'm so sorry.
He's too young. He doesn't know what those throwback posts are. So some of us have some real regular throwback posts. That's just mean, Dorian.
No, I'm really, I don't know what.
The ones that are memories, from 10 years.
I was playing outside. I was touching grass. I mean, you can't say that for kids now, but I don't know what was MySpace, maybe. What was that?
No, it was on Facebook.
I'm so sorry. Cut that.
Okay.
On Facebook, throwback, a throwback. We'll just call it. We'll call it a throwback. Yes.
The memories things that come up, from 10, 15 years ago.
Okay, a memory. So... Tell me about this Facebook. I'm very curious now.
Okay. So, just this statement that I had made about all the mothers that I was working with, who were raising their kids. I was hanging out with. I wasn't working with them. They were raising their kids. They were looking at helping, other families around them. And I remember just thinking, I feel like there's more real change and an ability to make a contribution at this level than I sometimes felt at the UN. Because I think when you get to those sorts of positions, sometimes it can be a bit more about the role and the position than the substance of what's being said. And so I wouldn't say that's the case for everybody there. I think 90% of people there really have the best intentions and are trying to make change. But then some of the structural, challenges of working within an institution like that are hard. I think it also depends where you feel satisfaction, where your capacity is being used the best. And to me, I started to see that the field of education was a place that I could really contribute. And, I love working with students. I love having conversations with students. I love thinking about how they're, going to get to where they want to go. So that also is just kind of a personal choice.
Right. And going further with your decision to pivot towards education, historically, universities were dominated by men and male figures, and the way they were set up systemically was to benefit men. You've done a lot of work with women around the world, and especially with the International International Women's Day and International Day of the Girl.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Good for you.
Yeah, she used to do. You used to do a massive event at Brusha.
Yeah.
In what ways would you like to see women be integrated into not just into the schools and into like higher education, but in what meaningful ways do you think women need to be represented in like the halls of power, I want to say, and the levers of control that we see in society?
I think that's a great question.
We actually, as you know, spent the last week where we bring all the Nancy Campbell students to Wildfire for a retreat, and the topic was 2 wings, 1 flight. So looking at gender equality. And when we were preparing for it, we were thinking, okay, like what's
The reality of gender equality in North America? What's the reality in South America and Africa and Europe? Like, it's very different. One thing that has happened in North America is that you have more women graduating from post-secondary education than men.
Right.
So what does that mean? You know, like what's happening on both sides of the gender equation that are allowing women maybe to prosper in our traditional forms of education, and some boys and men to be left behind? Like, is that happening? But then we still see that when it comes to CEOs, boards of directors, politicians, we're still at 23, 25% of those bodies. So, and pay is unequal. So there's a lot of challenges we still face. One of the things that came up last week that we were speaking about is how we value what's traditionally seen as like a feminine contribution. These things of cooperation and collaboration, intuition, insight, that is like the softer approach. Do we still have a slant towards, appreciating those who are more outspoken and more dominant rather than those who may speak quietly but actually be able to bring many people's views to the table? Right. And I think that's something that each of us has to question almost daily. Like everything that we're doing, how are we allowing many, many people to contribute their thoughts and ideas? Like if we look at the state of the world, we need like as many people trying to help solve these problems as possible. But then like we can say that, but then if we, go downstairs to running an institution like the school and there's only, one person making the decisions, we haven't really changed that. So we have a management structure, administrative structure set up that's a consultative body. There's like 7 of us that sit and really think about how the school is functioning, what happens on a weekly basis, where it needs to go. And that's hard. Like it would be easier sometimes to just have one person making the decision. But it's not like that. We really, really do try to consult. It takes more time. But so those are some of the things that I see that need to change.
So saying no to dictatorships.
I think so. I think that could sum it up pretty
Unless
well.
it's yourself.
Well.
No, she wouldn't. No, but I definitely see where you're coming from. So do you feel like that's what's missing right now in higher education, that consultative approach?
I think in some ways, I think they're trying to be much more consultative. Brescia had this great program, and the reason I agreed to go and teach there is they had a community development program that really integrated service learning into what they were doing. So I'd say that's one thing I think that's missing in a lot of higher education programs is like the practical aspect of higher education. I think that kids learn a lot from going out into the community. So one of the things in the first year course that I taught was like literally a pay it forward kind of project where you design something that gave something back to the community. So it was easy for them to think about, going to just collect coats or, whatever it is, like collecting money for the food bank. But I challenged them and I said, look, if you could actually bring people into a process that they design what they need to see in their own community, and that might continue even without you after you go, that's going to get the highest marks. Right. I didn't mean to motivate them with marks, but it's kind of what I had. So so I think helping everybody to always think of like, who am I bringing along with me? Who, like, I'm a protagonist, I can change something, but who else is beside me? Who am I bringing up next to me? Who am I working with that allows their voice to be heard? That's the next step, because even service can become self-serving. Like if we're doing it for a resume to get into university to get a better job, who's that really serving? Right. So some of those intentions and really questioning how we're working, I think is something to think about.
Yeah. As you mentioned, there is a bit of a disparity now where where a lot more women are in universities compared to men. I actually have a degree, I'd like to say.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But Go Warriors, University of Waterloo. I always have to throw it in there. But no, you're seeing a lot more men choosing to opt out of university. And there's this culture of, I don't need to go, school's stupid. And there kind of feels like, again, not trying to get political, but there feels like in certain parts of the world, there's this attack on education and higher education. And it feels as though there's this messaging to young men especially, where it's just like, to regain your rightful place in society, don't go over there because they're going to convince you that you're bad by trying to, talk about these topics of equality, equity of race between races, and these different topics that are super important. There seems to be a bit more of I want to say a pendulum shift away from those topics that will overall advance humanity, right? So in what ways, like, I know you spoke about how service can really bring people back into the fold, but in what ways can we combat that in a way? I don't even want to say the word combat as if it's a fight, but clearly there is some sort of disconnect that's happening right now, where some men might feel that women are getting more opportunities now, even though it's just not true. How do we go from here in this situation?
I mean, I think there's many people trying to learn about this. I think one thing is like to stop trying to separate educational institutions from the reality of people's lives. Like the concept of an ivory tower where somebody would just sort of like sit somewhere and think and then like share their thinking with other people. I don't think that works anymore. Like in order for knowledge to be, useful, it has to be applicable to what people are experiencing. And frankly, it needs to be learned in action, like a process of generating knowledge and disseminating it. I would much more likely to respect someone that's, has some knowledge, but then has tried to do something with it and then reflected and consulted with others and then come back and refine that knowledge. And I don't know, I can't speak for men and boys, but I think maybe that's a bit of the disconnect. Like what have you done with this? How does it apply to my life? How is that going to help me in my life?
Right.
And then also I think we always have to be careful, like not to demonize the other. There is no other, like we are all one people. And if we're making certain people feel bad about certain things, of course they're not going to want to be in the conversation. So we have to be really, really careful that one of the things we talked about last week at Wildfire was like the means have to be coherent with the ends. So if our goal is to have equality and to have everyone able to contribute, we can't exclude all the men while the women try to get equal.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. We have to think about the path and how we're walking it together and what we're learning from each other, and not have some people race ahead and leave others behind, which has been the model. Like, it's understandable why we keep doing this. That's the only thing we've seen.
Right.
But we have to really like think about how we're changing this process.
I love that. I want to talk a bit more about our guy behind our guy in the chair, Bennett.
The guy.
He's the guy. Just told us we only have a couple minutes here, but with those few minutes, I just want to speak to your experience as a mother. If you guys don't know, Tahirih here has 4 daughters, so she lives in a house full of women, and the only males, I guess, is her dog Chase.
My husband.
Oh, your husband too. Yeah, her husband. Dr.
He's a pretty
Tim.
key part of this whole thing.
He's a pretty cool guy. No, she's not a single mother. Sorry, that sounded terrible. Oh my God. Sorry, Jeremy. But yeah, those two.
Yes.
Being the only guys in there.
The cats are males too.
Oh really? Wow.
We're not sure about the lizard. It's hard to tell.
Really?
Yeah.
We might need to.
And the bunny's a female.
So she lives in the zoo.
That's right.
She lives in the
It's
zoo.
a menagerie.
Where her kids also live too. But how has motherhood shaped your viewpoints, I guess, on education, especially being a mother to 4 girls who will eventually become, 2 of them are already young women now. Were there concerns beforehand? Are there fears that you have now? And what would you like to say to like other moms out there? Well, that's a lot, but like stare in the camera and let the moms around the world know what words of wisdom you may have.
I mean, I think the first thing I would say is that like motherhood has been like the greatest gift of my life for sure.
And she's great at it too, actually.
No,
Bennett was
we don't
struggling
know.
to say a word earlier, and she's like, "It's okay, honey." You let those,
I didn't say it
no,
like
you're
that.
like, those words are big too. Can you tell me how you feel? Great.
Did not
I
say it
felt
like
supported
that at all.
Well, that's what it sounded like to me. It sounded great. Look, he's smiling behind the camera too. He's very happy. That's his aunt, by the way, just to clarify. So.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry.
Okay,
Please,
so
go ahead.
motherhood. So greatest joy, hands down, of everything. If you could take, any experience that I've had away, I would fight for that one first and foremost, because I think the gift of being able to, love someone so selflessly, like you're forced to be selfless. And I think that really allows someone to develop in ways they never thought they could. So that has been the greatest gift. Parenting with my partner, Jeremy, has been, amazing. I've learned so much from him. I think I've, in conversations with lots of parents, especially in North America, I think that role of being a parent is not something that's like highly valued. I've had the gift of serving with groups of families and having children's classes and junior youth groups. And, there's like a lot of pressure, especially in North America, to, be materially successful, to have your career succeed.
Right.
Nobody says, I want to be a really great mother or father. And yet that is, I think, not that you have to be great at being a parent, whatever that means, but to be a loving, present parent for your child and know your child and intuitively know what they need and be dedicated to their development guarantees so much of the progress of humanity, right? So just being able to have that conversation with parents, not in a way that's like trying to be like, oh, I'm a mother, I'm so great, but in like, are we really thinking about what we're doing here? Like, this is really important work. I would love to see, society like value that so much more than it does for both mothers and fathers. And for us to be able to like think collectively about how we really encourage that. Mothers say to me like, I'm getting all this pressure to go back to work early, for finances, or I just don't think I'm doing enough because they're not in every extracurricular activity and we can't afford all of this. And, like that kind of stuff really takes away from the substance of those family relationships and how important they are. But then I think another thing that I've learned is like it doesn't serve anyone to be like an insular, inward-looking kind of family. Like you're going to have your challenges, you need your family time, but everyone will grow and develop if they see themselves as part of a wider community and as part of contributing to something greater than themselves. So like your doors need to be open, your kids, and I see that sometimes a little bit of like, I'm going to keep my kids safe here by themselves and I'll control everything around them. And then I know they'll be their best. But actually like we learn and grow with others, and they're going to be affected anywhere they go. So we need to learn how to, interact with others and grow in that way. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, part of it, but like,
what was the other part?
just having daughters. And
Oh,
what that
daughters.
means.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I haven't figured all that out. Like I tried my best. I think really encouraging them to see their own gifts, but then to see their gifts in like relation to how they can contribute to others, so it's not like a self-serving gift. It's like how am I going to help, people around me? That's what we've really tried to focus on. And the other thing you always think about as a parent is this balance between like emotional, physical, intellectual, spiritual. Sometimes it feels like, okay, what do we, how are we managing all this? How are we hearing what they're going through? And then trying to really make sure that like the inner core of the person is taken care of. I think there's a parent intuition, maybe it's a mother's intuition. I think fathers have it too. When you
No, it's definitely just moms.
No, when
moms know everything.
Something
It's
is
creepy,
up,
yeah.
and you have to take the time to talk it through. I think that's like something I've really learned about girls. My sisters, who all have boys, say they don't quite get the same information out of them at the end of the day as I do.
How was school? Fine.
Exactly. I'll text my sisters. We all of the cousins went to a camp together, and so we're going to bed, and my daughters are like, "This happened, and this happened, and this happened," going on and on and on. So I text my sisters at the end of the night, "Did they tell you about this, this, and this?" And they're like, "Are you kidding? No." We got how was camp. Fine. Right. That was it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's true. It's definitely not true of all girls, but my girls, a lot of talking, a lot of processing, which is great because I love talking and processing too. So it's been a real treat. I also have had a lot of fun getting to know the boys at Nancy Campbell and getting to talk to them and get to know, get to know their views on life and what they need. So maybe it's like set me up well to have more patience with some of the boy students here.
Yeah.
I've got the...
You're like, it could be worse. No. Well, anyway, she has to run off and be a mother and be so many other things today. But we're so grateful to have had you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a really great forum for learning and sharing. And I look forward to watching the rest of the podcast.
Of course. Guys, please subscribe, and we will see you here back. Well, we'll see you back here next week. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.